Straight up with a twist. What's up, humans? So today I wanted to talk about gas and not the bodily function of gas, but this is also just as smelly. And what's going on in the oil industry? What can we understand about the companies and what they're doing moving forward? And what can we do to lower greenhouse emissions? Also, just wanted to apologize for my sound levels, which is so strange because I checked them and checked the gain and everything before I posted. And I don't know what happened with the stereo or what line that the vocals were in, but the levels were all crazy. And hopefully this episode doesn't do the same thing. But I do apologize if that happened to ring your ears on certain sections when I had some other parts come in. So sorry if I blew your eardrums out. Didn't mean to do that. But whatever. I'm still a new podcaster. So hopefully you were able to catch that, turn it down, not blow out your eardrums. So I apologize. I will not be paying for your bills in the future if you lose your hearing. So I do apologize. Sorry about that. It's been a crazy week too. So just getting the podcast up, I was proud of. I'm like, check, did it. Did my thing. Guys, sometimes, people make things look easy in life. Like, oh, look, Katie has a podcast. Look, doing stuff like this is not easy. Doing anything that especially that is a passion project or anything like that, that's what they are. They're passion projects. It doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, everybody's got their stuff together 100% of the time. We still have our responsibilities from day to day. And, I'm still just proud that I'm continuously putting out an episode every week. So whether it's perfect or not is not necessarily my main concern, but just that I'm talking about things and getting these conversations out there just to get them started. That's really what this is about. It's just to get people talking. So thank you. Even if I blew your eardrums out, I hope you still appreciate what I'm trying to do. All right. First and foremost, I think it's important to understand that only 10% of U.S. oil and gas production occurs on federal lands and waters. So this limits the federal government's ability to impact leasing decisions. And there are over 9,000 open leases. The other 90% is done on state and private resources. So why aren't we drilling? What is going on? Well, a lot of the executives decided that instead of continuing to drill, that they would pay the dividends to their CEOs and wealthy shareholders and simply not invest in new oil production. So the oil industry has everything it needs to increase production, but it's chosen more so to profiteer off the current crisis rather than act. Now, to better understand the history of this goes way back to when the Rockefellers were basically monopolizing the oil industry, and the government filed suit against them. And then that's when we separated into all of those other companies like Exxon and Mobil, and they just broke into, Amoco and Conoco, Chevron, and those companies then came to dominate much of the international oil market for the remaining decades. Then you have World War I, and then that causes shortages and problems with our imports and exports as well. So over time, everybody wants to put their hand in the pot, and they're adding duty taxes and import quotas, and then they're blending ethanol made from the excess crops, and some countries have too much supply and now they're hoarding it. So that's why that they're adding these taxes to it so that we don't, so that the barrels aren't just going to be too cheap and that people can still make money off of exporting and importing the barrels. And it all circles back to war and people being cocky and wanting to control things rather than just having a conversation and talking about it, which is just one thing that's driven me nuts when you look at war and all of these things. It always starts with the conversation and then ends with the conversation. So I don't understand why we do all the war between. But, Mexico was withholding their oil and America didn't want to go to war with them. So they just kind of held back for a little bit. And then you have Pearl Harbor, which was all oil. America was withholding it because Japan attacked Indochina. So they retaliated and then they attacked us and we lost so many people December 7th. And the only thing that they didn't manage to target was our oil storage. So we had like 4 million barrels over there. So it left fuel for the surviving Pacific fleet. And after that war, the country came together and they had to do nationwide rationing plans that had gas coupons, and you weren't allowed to drive over 35 miles an hour. So when you need to, we can come together as a country if it's going to help us ultimately. But America is pretty good at creating good relationships as well. And Saudi Arabia had one of the largest oil rigs in the world. So they became king. And then Europe didn't become as dependent on the U.S. And just over time, it always comes down to war. Sometimes they would have overproduction of oil, and then they would have to put all of these restrictions and helping to change the prices of the barrel since the prices were being slashed and they were too low. So at some points in history, we had too much oil, and then at other points, we were suffering not having enough, and it usually was because of war. So like the Suez Canal and the attack on Israel were big components in why we had these shortages and why people were at panics. And there's been plenty of times in history where there were long lines at the gas pump and prices went up 40% in 2 days, and it usually is always because of war and who is withholding. President Nixon, he rejected recommendations to implement conservation efforts and develop fuel alternatives. So this isn't new. It's not like Biden's like, oh, I just want to go green. We're doing it so that we don't become dependent on crude oil. And if there is a war, then people are going to say, I'm keeping my oil and I'm not going to export it to you. So it's really just a safety mechanism so that we can be a stronger and more independent country for ourselves. Now, we should all work together. That's how it should happen. But war is war and people make terrible choices and they get really selfish and they make poor decisions. And, Carter was another president who really tried to influence, the green and energy efficient movement as well. So it's not for a lack of trying. People are really trying to make a change. And it can't happen overnight. It has to be something that everybody works together to do so that we don't have these supply crises. Now, regardless of the continuous wars between Iraq and Iran and so on and so forth, you've got the problem of all of the spills that we keep having. So you've got the Alaskan spill where they drilled into a coral reef, and you've got the Deepwater Horizon BP spill that happened in the Gulf of Mexico. You've got the oldest one, that Santa Barbara spill. So if we keep having these spills, it slows down our ability to produce in America and to export. So that's why we mostly import into America. We have to keep putting on these holds, and it's terrible. And that's the problem with news today is we get the news and we're devastated for a few weeks and then we move on to something else. And it's sad because the oil really devastates our environment, so much so. And to put that into perspective, a spill of only 1 gallon of oil can contaminate 1 million gallons of water. And it's not just happening from our spills. We are contaminating the ocean just as humans every single day. So we are doing land-based runoffs that pollute rivers, and it's airplanes, it's small boats, it's jet skis, and things like that. It's not just pipeline spills. So that is something that, of course, people, wonderful human beings that come together who care about our environment are trying to prevent. And your cocktail of the day is The corn and oil cocktail served in an old-fashioned glass. You would stir the first 3 ingredients with ice and then strain into a glass filled with crushed ice. It'll be 1.5 ounces of Bacardi 8-year-old rum, half Florida ounces of Falernum liqueur, 2 dashes of Angostura aromatic bitters, and then you float a dark black blackstrap rum on the top. Enjoy! So, as we know, everything always comes down to money. Supply and demand. Are the shareholders nervous about where their money is going? And should we continue to build? Should we create the same refineries that we're doing for this crude oil, or are we moving into the future? Because why would I invest in something if in 10 years from now, I'm not going to make the money I need to when I probably should have invested in clean energy, right? So we have this kind of, stalemate on, well, where should we go from here? And currently the only port that we really have that's our biggest exporter is Corpus Christi, right? So that's our main exporter. And then we've got a lot more places that we import from. So it's always that question, like, why are we importing when we have all of this wonderful oil? So here's the thing on oil. So in America, we are king, right? We've got all this amazing oil. Our land is awesome. We provide, right? We've got all this stuff. So then why are we importing? Why is our main thing importing? So it's actually cheaper, right? So we are importing this nasty, heavy crude oil that smells like sulfur, and it's sour, and it comes to us, but it's cheaper, right? So we import all this stuff. And the reason that we do that is because earlier, we built refineries that could handle the heavy crude oil so that we could refine it here. So that's what we've been doing all of these years. So we have all of these refineries that can handle that stuff. Then we take our sweet, good, not sulfur smelling stuff that we actually produce in America and we ship it away, right? And so that's what we're sending out. And a lot of other countries rely on our oil. And I don't know if this was a strategy. It was like, well, we got plenty of it, we're not going to give all of our stuff away, but if we can get all of their stuff and then they become our biggest, producer in oil, then we still have our own stuff here just in case. But the problem is we didn't build any refineries that are good for our stuff, right? So now it's like, all right, well, what do we do, right? And we've got all this crude oil coming in, and then when we're bringing it in, we've got this nasty, heavy stuff that we're putting through our systems that can damage our ecosystem, that can make things worse. So we're getting in all the sludge and the nasty stuff when we actually produce all the sweet stuff. So it's a bit confusing, but it all comes down to money. And, we are like, we have the best machinery and we can take all your crappy stuff and turn it into gold, basically, even though we produce our own gold here, basically. So that's kind of the process of, the ins and outs of, what kind of oil that we produce, but we mostly import rather than export. And we get a lot of it from Mexico. So, we have to try to keep our alliances. We have to try to be nice to these other countries, because then when we do have war, we go through this kind of devastation and price gouging and all of these things. So what is the holdup? Why aren't we retrofitting these old, drilling facilities and refineries and turning everything into clean, renewable energy? Well, there's pushback. I mean, a lot of people vote against these new energy efficient bills, and they're like, drill, baby, drill, use our American soil, and let's just, pull from here. And without understanding the full scope of everything, it's hard to move forward when there's people pushing back. So I think the goal is to retrofit, recreate, and go towards renewable resources. But if we piss off countries like China, we're not going to get any of our solar power, because China is the one who provides us with all of our electric vehicles and solar panels and wind turbines, and they can withhold that from us. So it really is just about relationships and actually making the progress and taking the steps that we need to take, as long as the companies are willing to work towards a new economy and a new change. And what our future is going to be. If we get so many people that don't believe in global warming and the greenhouse effect as it is, then we will just continue to pollute and ruin the world that we live in. And then continue what we're doing now, which is go to war and fight for oil and have oil spills and be so ignorant to what it does to our world. I mean, Russian's natural gas is 22% dirtier than European coal. So it's literally considered, like, people have quoted it to be the dirtiest on earth, right? So we know this. And when you watch videos, I feel like people do that out of sight, out of mind thing. And they're like, oh, well, if I don't see it happening, it didn't happen. If a tree falls in the woods, did it really, and it didn't make a sound, did it really fall? And it's like, we see the outcomes, and like, people are crying about the pipeline that we removed. I mean, Canada also has dirty oil, and we saw the devastation that it brought to our ecosystem, and people just like didn't look at that. All they thought was, oh, you took something away from me. I'm an American. You took away my pipeline, and I'm like, well, did you see what it was doing? I'm like, maybe if you looked with your eyeballs and you could see like the devastation that this is causing. So I'm really hoping that if we could stop with the big schlong contest, that we could actually work together and make a better planet for ourselves. Captain Planet, he's our hero, gonna take pollution down to zero. Okay, one of the best cartoons. Come on, we need that same energy. Let's get back to that. Let's get back to that focus, because that's really the focus that we need. It's that time of year where the kids are out of school and the summer camps are in. Does your kid have a lot of energy? Do they need someplace to express themselves? More importantly, do they like to dance? Then come check out my summer dance camps and ongoing classes, all done from the comfort of your own home. Join me online at outschool.com. That's OUT school.com. And use my referral code for $20 towards your first class. That code is JPPVPTNH. Again, that's JPPVPTNH. Search Miss Rose under the art section and let's virtually dance together. Whether it's hip hop, jazz, or musical theater, I'm teaching routines for all levels to fun tunes from Descendants, Zombies, Moana, Frozen, Encanto, and more. I teach all ages and take date and time requests from parents as well. Enjoy zooming from your personal dance floor to mine virtually. Hope to see you on the dance floor. So none of this stuff is going to happen overnight, and it's all wonderful thoughts. But currently, we have a ban on Russia, so we have to get our crude oil from other countries like Venezuela and the Middle East. So it's just taking time, and I understand why we are doing the ban, and we are going to be there for our allies the best way that we can. But it doesn't change the fact that we need to do something, that we need to change the way that we are living. Gas in our houses and even just our grills. Now, grilling, that's a very small carbon footprint that you're putting out for grilling. But, coal, charcoal is the worst of them. There's tons of chemicals in charcoal, and we don't even know half of it. There's plastics in them. So they say using propane or even electric, even though electric doesn't give you that, nice char taste or anything like that, is better for the environment. And even electricity, leaves a carbon footprint. But if we do electric heating instead of gas heating, things like that it can help. And currently, we've got all of these gases that trap heat in the atmosphere, and that's the greenhouse effect. And we've got carbon dioxide, which is 79% of what goes out into the air. That's just from humans' activities. You've got methane, nitrous oxide, and then the fluorinated gases are the manufactured ones, are the things that we are putting out there from household and commercial industrial applications and things like that. And these are all things that we are trying to change, to at least to do our part and pull back on. I mean, I recycle everything. I would love if we went back to the milkman and we went back to glass and not plastics, because as we have seen plastics get all into our oceans and kill the environment, absolutely kill it. Sunscreen kills our coral reefs. So look at your sunscreen and read the ingredients on them and make sure you're getting sunscreen that is safe to go into the water with. It's all these little things, and you think, oh, I'm just one person. Yeah, you're that one person, and then thousands and thousands of people say, I'm just one person, and then it collectively ruins our environment. So just those baby steps, moving forward, and if you can, just question all of the things that you're using. And we've got these awesome devices in our hands now. So if you have a question about, hey, what is this doing to my environment? Look it up real quick, and Google it and find out how bad is it, for our environment. Now, luckily, we have a lot of laws that are in place for the air. So anti-pollution laws that have been passed ever since things like the London smog that occurred and how devastating that was. Over 4,000 people died from that, where an anticyclone caused cold air to stagnate over London. So like the sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, everything came together, and Winston Churchill was like, oh yeah, it's just going to go away. Kind of like the virus. It's just going to go away. And it was too little too late. And people died not knowing exactly what it was. But it happened because of all of the coal-fired power plants that were contributing to the Great Smog. So that was what was causing it. So I know it takes a lot of these devastating things for us to learn from it, but we can't just continue to go this route. We do have amazing technology, and we can do fracking. And there are other countries that are ahead of us as far as their oil reserves, but we have the good oil, and we have the technology and the ability to frack and get that really deep down, that shale oil. So we do have the ability to tap into our own resources, but we also see that it can cause mayhem and disaster and deaths. And unfortunately, we don't know enough about what can happen due to all of this. And just like that deadliest lake in the world, Lake Manaun, that killed all those people, we don't know enough. People still today are like, oh yeah, I think it was, eruption from a volcano, and at the Lake Nyos by Lake Manaun. So those are both crater lakes, right? And people are still like, oh, I don't really know what happened with that, and we always find out everything after the fact. So if we could get ahead of this so we don't have clouds of carbon dioxide going into the air and killing us, then we can move forward. And so I think cleaner energy at the end of the day, so that we can protect our ozone layer and not just randomly die one day because we didn't realize what we were doing is going to kill us. We need to create new infrastructure and figure out a way to move forward with clean, renewable energy. I think we just need to reinvent and stop being so dependent on these disgusting tar sands that we use that literally pollute our air and our water. I mean, we are destroying our most basic resource, and we need fresh water. It's already an issue in other countries, and we are continuously destroying the thing that we definitely need to survive, rather than being like, oh, I need oil for my, lights and for my car so I can get from place to place. We really do need to move forward into the future and get to the hoverboards and the electric things and the things that are not going to pollute and kill our people. And if we don't take these steps in the right direction and in a new direction, we will eventually run out of resources. We will run out, and then we will go, oh, well, now what do we do? And people will be at war again, depending on their reserves and fighting for these things that ultimately will kill us, whether it's us killing each other for the resources or not having the resources and failing as an economy because we don't have them anymore. So truthfully, we do need to reinvest, and shareholders should reconsider where they're putting their money. And we do need to reinvent the wheel. And I believe that that's really the only way that we're going to get out of this, rather than being like, oh, let's just think about ourselves and let's drill in our own country because we have the most of something right now. We always have to prepare for when we are going to need other countries for their resources and when we're going to need their help. So we all need to work together and decide, hey, this is the next step forward, rather than just going back to the old ways of constant pollution and killing our ecosystem. And as Barack Obama said, he quoted, "We will keep on being a victim to shifts in the oil market until we get serious about a long-term policy for secure, affordable energy." And that's also what I believe. We just keep doing this back and forth, and oh, let's just mix corn into it, and let's, take sugar cane and mix that in there too until we can make it last longer. And, spending billions of dollars on these, drilling off these refineries, and I just don't think that that is looking at the long term. And continuously we see that war keeps happening and people keep putting tariffs on things and, bans, and we just keep doing this back and forth, back and forth. And the most ambitious climate accord was the Paris Agreement, and that was signed by more than 190 countries, to which, of course, they pledged that they're going to cut emissions by more than 25%, and everyone's trying to, transition from fossil fuels. And then you got Trump that comes in and is like, nope, never mind. I'm going to pull out of that. And while I'm at it, I'll just revive the Keystone pipeline as well. So I don't know what the answer is. Are we supposed to stop eating red meat and get rid of all the cows because they burp and they fart methane? Because that's also a problem. But we can't just tell people to stop eating meat, just as we can't tell people you must get jabbed. So there's all of these things that we know contribute, but it's next to impossible to force anybody to do anything. Right? I mean, you can tell people to recycle, but I've got tons of neighbors that literally throw trash out their windows or don't put it in bags and it gets all over my yard because they aren't responsible. Even Saudi Arabia, who is one of the number one distributors of oil, has spoken to Elon Musk about the future of energy. So if they're doing it, then it sounds like they're ahead of the game and they don't want to be totally dependent on oil, right? So it looks like, I mean, even GM, right? So General Motors did the same thing, because they're looking at the future of, electronic vehicles. And a lot of people are investing in this future. And then people are confused. Well, is it global warming that's causing the natural disasters? And if we go all electric and there's a natural disaster, then how are we going to recover as quickly? Granted, even when there's a natural disaster, the ports are closed off anyways. So regardless of if it's oil or if we have to wait a little bit while longer until our electricity turns on, we're still struggling to figure out how to get back on our feet. And I feel like whether it's electric and solar and that's the future, or we have distribution and, train and transportation issues, then either way it's a problem. So some people are like, I just want my coal and I just want my oil, and that's what they know as America. But we've also seen the problems that has brought to us. So we could be like, oh, well, see, I told you not to, go energy dependent, and now look, a hurricane came through and ruined everything. Okay, well, we're still working on making sure that we've got waterproofing and underground lines so that we can avoid those situations, and that's the future. Meanwhile, an oil spill can happen and people don't even bat an eye. They're like, yeah, whatever, we'll recover. So I guess it just depends on what side of the fence you're on this. Do you want to move forward and do you want to find new ways of producing energy and having the same functionality that you so desire in our first world country? Or do you want to keep it old school and just use the oil that is completely ruining our environment and our ozone layer? I guess it's just, I could sit here and talk about the price differences and how much another country makes and who is the king and, what there's like top 10 countries who produce oil and crude oil and how they get it and who has the best refineries, which is us. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's still this I'm better than you, I have more of this. And it really should just be, hey, let's all work together as a world, not this selfish ideology that I'm the best, let's only depend on ourselves, which I feel like that is not a viewpoint that is going to end up benefiting us, regardless of whether we move forward with, more electric and futuristic possibilities. So I hope that we can all come to an understanding. And, I hate that it comes to this money hungry stocks capitalist, view. It should be about the people who are, spending their hard earned money and their taxes and what works best for our nation. And, we tried it. We tried coal and oil and all these things for all these years. Why can't we try moving forward? Why can't we try that and see if it works before people just knock it and go, nah, I don't think that's going to work. So for me, I think I'm about change and trying new things. And, take some time if you are interested in this and look into it. It's sort of confusing. Like I said, I spent days reading it and it's still confusing because it's really just about, who has the oil exporting, if there's a natural disaster, if there's a war. I mean, war is a huge part of it. And it's really just it's a game on numbers. That's all it is. It's a numbers game. So, like I said, regardless, for me, everything, if it's going to be a numbers game, it's going to be about money. Everything's always going to be about money, whether it's electric or it's oil. So why don't we just figure that out rather than being focused on what it is that we're using as if I'm, somehow pledged my allegiance to oil when I was a baby and I was born or something. Why don't we just look at how it's going to affect us financially, period, and how it's going to benefit us as a world and for our world health. To me, that is more important, is about the future and what's going to benefit us in the long run, rather than just, no, this, right now, this makes more sense and this makes me more money and this makes my life easier in this moment. I feel like that's why we keep going through these cycles and these circles, is because everyone's always concerned about in the moment, but it just keeps repeating itself because, people just go, oh, all right, fine, we'll just go back to what we did before. And then we just keep doing that because that's what the people keep saying they want. So I think the only way that we're going to get away from this is if we do try to change things. So we'll see what happens. But that's my little rant about oil today, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. This has been Katie Rose, served straight up with a twist. Catch my follow-up Fridays on YouTube, where I respond to your YouTube comments on any thoughts or questions relating to each week's episode. It gives you a chance to have a more intimate conversation with me and opens up the door to new topics. Find me at my YouTube channel, Katie Rose, straight up with a twist. And remember, if you're thinking it, I'm probably talking about it.